change the world.
On we go.
Hello, welcome back to Coffee Over Apples. My name is Steph. This is an independent book review for Dowry of Blood by S.T. Gibson. I'm going to try to do a spoiler-free and then a spoiler-filled section for this. This book triggered the hell out of me, all right? This was intense. If you don't know, this is a horror story written in second person by the brides of Dracula in the form of letters to Dracula. There are trigger warnings in the beginning of this book, and rightfully so. This book is ultimately about overcoming narcissistic abuse. Dracula reads to me as a very clear narcissist. And so I'm going to get more into that into the spoiler section. So for spoiler-free thoughts, I gave this 5 stars. I understand why lots of people may not feel comfortable giving this 5 stars. It's not a typical horror. It's more of a psychological horror. And so for me, this was horrorful. It's not necessarily that so much vampiric action happens in here that this would constitute a horror that would be in the same vein as like Hellsing or something like that. If you're looking for action, it's not here. I had to put this down multiple times. If you go in with the right expectation, there is a chance that you'll potentially enjoy this. Constanta is a village girl who hundreds of years ago was quote unquote saved by Dracula because her village was like pillaged or something happened and Dracula came, turned her into a vampire and said, I'm giving you a second chance at life. That makes him her only contact with the world because he is the only vampire that she knows. It's not like he brings her back to his society. He brings her back to his castle and she is now his wife. And so she is indebted to him, which is the foundation of her love. Going from one abusive lifestyle to another does not constitute love. Going from one abusive lifestyle to another does not justify being indebted to somebody. However, he shows her affection and gives her worldly goods and keeps her safe, especially the fact that in the beginning of the book, he takes her to get revenge on the people who killed her family. So he's just piling on the justification for her to stay with him. And so why leave? Why go into the world as a single female vampire in a medieval land that doesn't want you and is dangerous and where she can't get employment, potentially maybe not for like another 100 years or so, or as we'll start to see when we get to the second wife, ways that she can potentially sustain herself. So, he takes advantage of her at the time of life when she is at her lowest and then kind of like trains her to stay with him by putting her in situations that repeatedly show her how horrible the world is outside of his castle. So grade A manipulation. That's the beginning, right? Eventually there come 2 more additions to his polyamorous relationship. And I say his because even though eventually they are all accepting of this family that he is creating, the circumstances in which the family grows are still gaslighting and manipulation and emotional abuse because certain partners don't get the chance to speak their piece in both the sense of like, are they open to a polyamorous relationship? Do they want monogamy? They don't get a chance to even give their opinion about the people and the dynamics of the personalities that are going to be joining their family. So, if you're going to be in a polyamorous relationship, there has to be all forms of consent saying like, how does how do both partners or all the partners feel about this new person that's going to be added to the relationship? What are the boundaries that are going to be set, or what roles are they going to play in the household? And, not that every single person needs to fit a particular role, but these are still conversations about like space and boundaries and expectations, right? Communication. And our wives don't get that. So that is a huge, 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 huge part of this. I don't know what else I could possibly say about this that's like spoiler free, other than it is really short and it will read really quickly if you're not like me and put this down a couple times. It is queer. We have different characters who are from different centuries and also from different lands, because it's kind of like every time something happens to Dracula's castle or where they're living, it's never his fault. He never did anything wrong. It's like always the world is out to get him, right? Again, typical narcissistic behavior, never wanting to take responsibility for their actions and just kind of being like, woe is me, I have bad luck, we need to relocate, move, whatever the case may be. And so that's kind of like how they come into meeting the different supplies that he has. And supply being that like a person who is a narcissist is consistently looking for additional people or resources that are going to be used to enhance their ego or be some sort of like alibi or give them some sort of reasoning for their actions that is external, never internal, right? So them bringing in these multiple wives, each serving, or partners rather, because the third one is a male, are coming into the relationship with different personalities, different cultural backgrounds, different economic statuses, and so are fulfilling a different one of his needs. But also as they're coming, they're kind of opening the door for our main character to see, oh, well, this is what I could do. And maybe I'm not alone anymore, so I have someone to talk to. And even though he tries to manipulate things so that they'll never be able to have the confidence or in the situation to ask the right questions, leave people alone long enough and they're going to start to question. In this case, centuries, right? So I don't know what to say. It was incredible. It was the way that it was resolved at the end, I think adds more to that traditional horror aspect. Good for them. Good for them. Moving into spoilers. The only part that kind of just weirded me out a little bit was Constanta's relationship with Alexei, and Alexei is the third partner to come into this relationship. She kind of expresses that she has this kind of like protective nature over him, and so the way that it was worded was a little bit weird. But so when they finally ended up in a relationship, it was like I kind of saw it coming, because she was already in a like back and forth relationship with Magdalena, I think her name was, which was the second wife. I didn't like the way that it was worded. It was kind of like, are you being motherly or are you not being motherly? I don't know. The reason that I feel like she was still primed, and again, I'm referring to Constanta, who is our main character and the first wife. The reason I feel like she was primed for being in a relationship with the other two spouses is because the primary interactions always stemmed from a place of Dracula's sexuality. Dracula introduced Constanta to both other spouses under the premise, or like under the lens of, look at this person, they're so beautiful, they have life, aren't they attractive? And like putting them in a situation where they can't necessarily disagree with them, they're seeing them in their prime, as in like, even though they are both Magdalena and Alexei, in situations where they are unhappy or life is eventually going to throw them a curveball, they're still actively in a space when Constanta first meets them where they are fully of themselves. They are loving what they're doing, either through the arts or through socialization, and like shining, right? They're in their moment, they're in their element. And so this is, again, meticulously planned by Dracula to say, look at this person. Isn't this the kind of person that you want in our home? Isn't this the person that would be perfect? Shouldn't we save them like I saved you, because they're mortals and eventually they're not going to be this anymore? Especially because both Alexei and Magdalena were notified that he is a vampire and were made aware of what this change kind of would entail. Like they were given the choice where she wasn't given the choice. And that is, I think, an important factor in her relationship with Dracula. Is different from their relationship with Dracula. And it becomes over time that she is specifically there and he hasn't gotten rid of her just because she is in good standing with the other two spouses, and it's easier for him not to rock the boat. But once he gets tired of them all, he will get rid of them and drop them without a second thought. So the whole point is like they need to get to him before he gets to them. But can they do that? And overcoming that psychological abuse is not easy. So I feel for them, and the fact that it took them hundreds of years to finally get the courage to do the things that it took to find evidence to lift the veil for all three members of this household to say, I know that you think things can change. I know that you think Dracula can be better. I know that you see a side of him that is beautiful to you, and that he intentionally doesn't abuse Constanta and Magdalena, because one is more of a physical abuse and the other is more of an emotional abuse, that he doesn't abuse them simultaneously in front of each other. So they're finding out secondhand. So it's like if you only see the good side of this person, and then you hear from someone else that this person is completely a different person when they're not in that room, when they're alone with them, it takes a complete paradigm shift to say, whoa, but how could this person that I know be capable of doing those things? Because they're different when they're with me. So it takes certain events for them all to have their veil lifted in different ways. And so how that happens is wonderful. I love them coming together. I was so stressed at the end when they finally got together and had to kill Dracula. I was like, oh my God, please, nobody change their mind. Please go through with this. So I love that for them, that they were able to go through with this murder. So that was great. Also, the blood drinking scene in here, best blood drinking scene that I've ever seen. However, there was no consent from Constanta. Even though there was like a ploy of asking for consent, it was not really consent, because there was still a level of manipulation to the situation that she needed to start off this new relationship with her sister wife on a positive note, because they're going to be stuck with each other forever. So, choices were made. Anyway, I love this. I highly recommend it. I'm definitely keeping this. Probably going to be in my top books of the year. Not sure. But anyway, thanks for watching. I post videos whenever I feel like it. Bye.
On we go. What's it making, Mr. Wonka? Mr. Wonka work the factory.